everybody, it's Christina from Redefine Creative, and I am here with a process video for you today using a whole bunch of frames. So this is for the Double Dare You series, and this is a series that I do with Laura Alberts. And if you are new around here to the channel, welcome. The way this particular series works is on the first Friday of the month, Laura and I issue each other, as well as all of you, a challenge to work on throughout the month. And then on the third Friday of the month, we come back and show you our take on the other person's dare or challenge. And so this month, Laura has challenged me to use a bunch of frames. And this is a really good challenge for me because frames are not something that I go to very often in my stash. And I have a bunch of them. So I'm going to play with the Cocoa Vanilla Midnight collection, and I'm also going to throw in some of the More Than Words collection. So I kind of have these two collections stored together because they have a lot of similar colors and things that will kind of work together. So I've taken some paper from the 6x8 paper pad, and I'm going to use it to build a little shelf below my photo. And so I get my layers where I want them to be, and then I just put a little staple for my tiny attacher through all the layers to keep them in that exact place. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim the other side. And I actually end up coming back later and trimming them even a little bit more because it was just a little bit too much. So what I decided I wanted to do with my frames is to create a border that's going to be kind of bold and go down the side of my page. And so I'm using all of these kind of squares as elements that are going to overlap and carry throughout that entire left side of the layout. And so I have all different sizes, all different colors. I'm just kind of varying where I have them placed. And as I keep going, I'm going to kind of change up how they fit together and where they go. But you get the general idea of how I want these to be lined up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the two smallest ones and a piece of it's what's it called? Transparency film, which is kind of what I use in place of acetate or packaging or something like that. And I'm going to make these two small ones some shaker pockets. So I've gone ahead and put some adhesive on the back of those two frames, and then I'm going to go ahead and adhere this piece of transparency so that I have a clear little window. And then I'm going to use this really thin foam adhesive. And there's two different brands that I know of that sell this particular adhesive. So these longer sheets are from Scrapbook.com. And then you can also get some smaller packages if you don't need quite this much from Doris. And those are actually in the Redefine Creative shop if you are looking for those. But I am going to just outline around the edge. And this really thin foam adhesive is perfect if you create a lot of shaker elements or if you work with cut files, because the width is just perfect for how those things are kind of designed. So once I make my complete square, and you want to make sure you don't have any gaps in your adhesive or your sequins will sneak out the back door, I'm going to go ahead and add some sequins into each one of the little windows. And I'm using some Spiegel Mom Scrap sequin mixes. And this particular one has a copper color, a pink, and then there's a few stars. And so I want to make sure that I get a star in each of my little sequin windows. So that's why I was kind of pulling out specific sequins. Otherwise, I'm just taking a little handful of the mix. And then I'm going to put it on this floral pattern paper. And you can use any kind of paper as your your backing or background. I wanted to use this floral because I thought it kind of gave it a little bit of a different look. Another really fun thing to try is using something with text or a die cut. You can do any kind of embellished background inside your little shaker if you want as well. But for this one, I stuck with that little floral paper, and it's also in part of the layers behind my photo. So only those two little ones are going to be shaker pockets. And I'm kind of changing up how I layer the frames together. There's really no rhyme or reason. I just want them to look kind of overlapping and strategic along that whole kind of border. I am going to take the one in the middle and I'm going to back it with some more of that floral pattern paper. I'm not going to make this one into a shaker pocket, but I have a die cut that I want to put in this particular space. And so I wanted to have some pattern paper behind it to kind of like break that part up a little bit. And I'm going to put some foam adhesive behind this little die cut, and that's going to go right in the middle. I did want to make sure that I left a bunch of the frames open because I really like that look of kind of the overlapping interwoven squares. If you're creating a look like this with frames, which is super fun, I would recommend you definitely try and use some foam adhesive on some of your frames. So you're going to have some that are flat and then some that you go ahead and raise up off the page a little bit. That foam adhesive is going to help your layout lay a little bit more flat because the frames are going to be going over like different heights. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So my little shaker pockets, I'm going to add a little bit more foam adhesive to the top. So they're almost going to be 2 foam adhesive layers like in height. And that's going to create a little bit of variety in how all of my frames are layered together. And then I'm just going to go ahead and continue putting this look together. So I have my frames that are going to get glued down, and you can see I'm adding those little pieces of foam adhesive in certain areas so that the frames are going to sit well on my page. So any of those areas that kind of have a little bit of overlap, you have to use a little piece of that foam adhesive just to keep it looking correct and adding a little bit of extra dimension so that you can see that the frames really are dimensional and layered over each other. And so that's basically going to create this entire border element. And look how many frames I got on this one layout. I was so happy with myself. But this is where I decide that I need to cut down that mat below my photos just a little bit. And I know that I need something in that top corner. So I'm going to go ahead and just flip it over because it has that really great floral on the back. So it's automatically going to pull that floral element through my layout, which is like a bonus. And I'm just going to cover the back of that little corner with white cardstock. And I'm going to use a coral ink pad here in a few minutes to put some ink around the edge of that corner because it's a little bit like stark white edge right there. And so I wanted it to have a little bit more definition. So I go ahead and just ink that corner, and that kind of helps tie everything together. And I really like that kind of pop of white that that corner adds. So then I'm just pulling through my ephemera. So I'm looking at both the ephemera from the Midnight collection as well as the More Than Words. And I decided to go with these little bit more like fun looking florals, I guess you could call them. They're a little bit more whimsical. That came from More Than Words rather than the little more formal ones that came from the Midnight collection. And I'm just creating kind of little spaces where embellishments are going to go. So I have a few little groups of florals that are going to be tucked in, and I have that little word happiness up at the top. I am going to create some dimension here in these groupings as well, and I apologize, I'm a little bit off the screen on the bottom. For some reason, you guys, I just cannot get the placement of the layout on my desk. So I switched my recording device because my like clamp broke, and the new clamp sits like closer to the wall. So I have to push my layout up towards the top of my desk. Like, granted, this is not like a serious problem, but still. And it's just not where I'm used to creating. Like, it feels like I have it pushed way too far away. So then what happens is you end up seeing it off screen. And for some reason, no matter if I start my layout up at the top or not, it like migrates back down the table toward me. Like you'd think the table is at a slant or something because it all just finds its way back to me and off the screen. So that was a really long story just to say I'm sorry that you can't see the bottom of the layout at this particular moment in time. I do get another little frame down in that bottom right hand corner where that cluster of florals is going to be, and it's just kind of tucked into my layers. I love that look of tucking a frame into like an area where you're creating an embellishment cluster. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some of these little metallic hearts. You saw me use the bluish colored ones earlier in the week on a different project. And so this time I'm using the pink ones. And then I was just trying to decide what kind of finishing detail I want to add. And Moira, you will be so happy to see again the Nuvo drops got pulled out. So just for you, there's some Nuvo drops in each one of those clusters. And I'm sort of like finally kind of starting to get the hang of making some drops. So that's a bonus. I'm going to put two little phrases underneath my photo just to kind of go along with the feel. Off screen, I did go ahead and go back and add a little die cut that says the word sweet at the very bottom edge of my photo because I felt like it needed to have that kind of finishing title detail. It is also from Cocoa Vanilla, and I just threw on some foam adhesive to make it stand up off the page. And that's going to do it for my take on the frames challenge. I hope you like seeing what I came up with and that you have taken on this challenge too. Bye, everybody.